Have you ever seen an ad that has a family having fun at the beach, or girls gathered together for a girls' night out, or whatever scene that you can identify with, and you thought to yourself, wow, that looks like me and my friends, or that looks like me and my family. I can really identify with that ad. Well, that's because the company has figured out who their target market is, and they've created an advertising campaign that caters directly to that market. So today we're going to talk about target market as it applies to developing an ad campaign. So let's go. You're listening to Marketing Adventure, the hub for business, fashion, marketing, and other CTE educators who integrate marketing into the learning experience. I'm your host, Jackie Walker. Each week, I'll cover marketing education concepts, strategies, tips, trends, frameworks, and other information to equip you to connect your classroom to digital natives while cultivating an engaged learning environment. So come on into the room where your favorite beverage, snacks, and even your cell phone are all welcome. So when a company is developing their ad campaign, of course, the company's already identified who their target market is because every company has a target market for the product or service in which they are selling. So the advertising company needs to know who that market is. And what we're going to discuss today are two markets. So there is a primary market, which is the main customer profile that the company is looking to market their products or services to. And then there's something called a secondary market. We'll get into that in just a little bit. So let's go over what the primary market consists of. And again, as I said before, I've already talked about target market in episode 32, but we're going to revisit it here and just expand a little bit more on the 4 different areas of a target market. So when we speak of the primary market, this is the group of consumers that a business has the greatest opportunity to convert to a customer. They're the people who they've identified as their early adopters to their product or services. These are the people who will be brand evangelists for the product because they believe so much in it, and they will be the ones who will be your repeating customers. And they're just they're just a good bet as a group of people who are the prime persons to actually consume the product or service. This primary market of people they meet all the data sets and are likely to buy into the product or service and or event that's been put on by the company. So this is your primary market. So let's look at the 4 different segments of what a primary market consists of. Now, when you speak of your target market, you may hear people refer to it as developing your avatar, or it could be your target market or your niche or your primary group of consumers. So it could be referred to in a variety of ways. I'm just going to call it a target market because that is the very simplistic marketing term for a group of people that a company has identified as their ideal customer. Now, as I stated before, there are 4 segments of a target market, and those are demographics, geographics, psychographics, and behavioral. So the first area that I'm going to cover is the demographic segment. This segment defines all of the characteristics of a person based on economics and identifying characteristics of the person, such as age and other things that identify them and segment them into a socioeconomic group. So those characteristics can be, like I said, age, their race, their gender, their income, education, the size of their family, and maybe even their sexuality. Now, those are very key factors that are looked at largely by companies because number one, products tend to be made for a certain gender or maybe even a certain ethnic group because of their cultural products, especially like your foods and then some of your clothing, like fabrics and things of that nature. So those are very key components of the demographics that are important to a company. And especially when you talk about advertising, if you have a commercial, let's say if it's for a drink, not every drink appeals to every age group. So if you're looking at like your sugary, sweet drinks, you may be looking at like a younger demographic. If you're looking at something like your teas and your coffees, you may be looking at an older demographic. So it's very important that the company knows what age group they want to target and really hone in on that particular age group. Now, if you're looking at things such as like spices for food and things of that nature, various cultures have different type of spices that appeal to them. So you could be doing things that are related to Mediterranean foods, and so you're going to have to, target your market based on their cultural background, their ethnic background. So if you're looking at having a commercial that or advertisement that is looking to be family vacation, fun, and all that kind of stuff, then you need to know what the family dynamics of that particular target market is going to be. So as you can see, demographics play a really huge part in identifying a particular market of people. They are very key. I remember when I was teaching, we did a simple, just to explain, just to get the kids to understand about demographics. I said, okay, what is we're going to look at this from a school point of view. As a school, how can we start identifying and breaking down groups of people? And so they would say, oh, well, you have your teachers and your students. Okay, that's one group. So you have your adults and then you have your students. And then I said, let's break it down even further. What's another identifier that we can use to break down these people into smaller groups? Then they said, oh, you have female and you have male. So that's another demographic. And then even further, I said, let's break it down even more. How can we get a little bit more granular with our group of people? And then they started saying ethnicity. So you can have your Hispanics, you can have your Blacks, you can have your Asians, you can have your Caucasians. So they started breaking it down and they started understanding the concept of breaking down demographics to identify a target market. Next, let's talk about psychographics. Now, it may sound like I'm going through these a little fast, but it's because I've covered them in episode 32, and you can refer back to that episode as well. But I just want to hit on all the different segments so that we can see how they're integrated into an advertising campaign. Now, as a company is advertising, they want to know the psychographics of their market, and the psychographics has to do with the lifestyle. Of course, when you're doing an ad is for a very specific thing. It could be that the company is advertising a new collection that's coming out for their apparel line or for their brand, or they could be advertising a very specific product. It doesn't have to be a whole collection. It could be a dress, or it could be a shoe, or it could be a purse, so it's something very specific. So when you're talking about psychographics, you really have to hone in on the lifestyle of that target market. Now, we know that lifestyle deals with, the music that the person likes. It has to do with what they like to do for hobbies. These are all the psychographics of a person. It is what they do for fun. It's those identifying things, those traits that that person and that market specifically do that is their leisure, more in their leisure time, what they do, what they choose to do. They're not born into this. They're not, it may not necessarily be a part of their culture, but this is some things that they've picked up along the way that they specifically say, I enjoy listening to country music. I enjoy playing tennis. I enjoy having animals. I enjoy going out with my friends to the club. It can be that they enjoy watching sports or attending sporting events. They may not necessarily be an athlete, but they may enjoy the entertainment of the sport itself. They could like going to concerts. They could like drawing. There's a variety of things that a person could indulge themselves in that helps create their psychographic profile. So that is something that is key for an advertising campaign to be focused on, because then they build that into the campaign. So they create this picture, like I said in the very beginning, of a family at the beach, or it could be a girl hanging out with her friends, a girls' night out, or them having a time where they're sitting and painting. So if you set that scene in the advertisement, it draws that particular person into the advertisement, captures their attention, and you have to capture their attention within the first few seconds of the advertisement in order for them to pay attention. And then you get to carry on with the advertisement and explanation of the product or service and everything else. But you first have to capture the attention of the target market. So you want to know what the psychographics of that person is. So you're going to look at their lifestyle and the things that they love to do. The next thing that you'll touch on when you're looking at your audience for the advertising is the geographics. Where does this audience live? Where does this target market live? Because that's very key to know, because you want to make sure that you're advertising in the proper climate, in the proper areas, that your message is going to reach a person where they are, and it has to relate to them. So you can't be advertising to a group of people in Alaska about swimsuits. You can't be advertising to a group of people in Miami about coats and heavy boots and all that kind of stuff. So you have to know where your market is so that you can then send out your message to that area where they live. So it's also about what the population consists of, so you need to know if it's a rural area, an urban area, if it's highly populated. You want to know things such as, like as I said before, what the weather is like where they live. All of those things matter when you're creating an ad and you're packaging it together to send it out into the market. You have to know where that message is going to be delivered to, and that it has the right people in that particular market. And the last segment is behavioral. This is where you consider someone's tendencies, their cultural beliefs, their beliefs as a person. That is, the behavioral tendencies that they have. So this can be a large number of things. It could be their belief in how to spend money. Maybe they're very conservative because that's the way they grew up. And they don't spend money freely, or they could have grown up in an environment where money was not an object. So cash was always on hand, and that's how they like to spend money. Or they could have been a person who had a credit card given to them and said, hey, the sky's the limit. I went to college with a girl. Her dad was the president of a major soda company, and she had a credit card that had like a $3,000 limit on it, something like that. And she just maxed it out every month, and he would just pay it off. And you know, she had a new beginning every month. He allowed her to say, "Hey, this is your max on this credit card. Whatever you spend is what you spend for the month. Whether you spend it all at the beginning of the month or you use it throughout the month. Then I'll pay it off, and then you'll have a new balance to begin with." So that is a behavior that she developed as growing up as a teen and into her early adulthood. Is that, she had unlimited spending power to a certain amount. Your behavioral could be based on your religion. It could be, your religious beliefs could play into how you make a determination, or a person makes a determination as to how they're going to consume products and services. So that could be a major factor. It could be whether you believe in buying brand names, or if you're a person that doesn't matter whether something has a particular brand on it. There are some people who will never buy great value from Walmart because they just associate it with a certain thing, whereas they would rather buy, the brand name items, even though products that especially like food products, canned products, packaged products, tend to be made at the same manufacturer. They just slap a different label on it. A lot of people don't know that, but people buy into whether something is brand or off-brand. So those are your behavioral considerations when you're looking at advertising to a certain group of people. You need to understand their behaviors, what's going to move them to making a purchase, or even just going to check out the product, going to the store to take a look at it, pulling it up online and taking a look at it. You have to understand their buying behaviors. All right, so that wraps up your primary market. Now, I did say that there is also a secondary market to most products and services that a company may even consider. When they're creating their advertising campaigns, they're primarily looking at the primary market. However, there is another market of people that they may consider, which would be their secondary market. This is the market that was not the initial one that they decided that they were going to focus on as their target market, but it's that market of people on the perimeter, on the edge, that's, potentially a market for them. And that is unexpected. So let's say jeans, for instance. Um, it was a time when skinny jeans were just created for the younger group of people. And then it made its way into the older group. The moms of the teens and the girls wearing the skinny jeans decided that, hey, I like the way those look, I like the way those fit. I want to try them. And they had the body for it, then they may have worn them. But then when companies start recognizing that, oh, this market of people that we weren't intending to be our consumer have become our consumer. So this secondary market of people, whether it's an older group of people, whether it's a different body size of people, have become the customers of this particular product or service. So companies start looking at their secondary markets. Who could be that outlier, that person that may want to consume this product? So you will see advertising start to include maybe not just this one particular market. They may focus on them, but then you may see other commercials or advertisements that, include a person who's a little different from that primary market, but they're including them into the advertisement because this could be our secondary market of people. They will look at those same four segmentations for that secondary person. They're going to look at their demographics. They're going to look at their psychographics. They're going to look at their geographics, and they're going to look at their behavioral segmentations. So the secondary market is not necessarily the main customer, but they are sometimes included in the data when a company is developing their advertising campaign. Nowadays, companies create advertising campaigns that not only focus on a primary group, but a secondary group and maybe even a third group of people, because companies are looking to sometimes move into different market areas or just expand their market area with the offerings that they have. So this is your overall look at target market as it relates to an advertising campaign. I hope this has been beneficial to your learning and your segment of speaking about the target market to your students. Come back next week where I will be going over the competitive advantage profile and talking about some things to consider for industry trends. I do thank you for joining me here at Marketing Adventure with Jackie, and I hope that you have a wonderfully blessed day. Thanks for listening to Marketing Adventure. Remember to subscribe, rate, review, and share this episode with someone you think would benefit from the information shared here today. If you have any questions or want to connect with me, find me on Instagram at Marketing Adventure. All links and resources discussed in this episode can be found in the show notes at marketingadventure.com.